they're doing. I'm sure some other people will arrive. Let's see. Stephanie, could you start for us and then pass it on to somebody else? So just briefly introduce yourself.
Hi, everyone. I'm Stephanie Rubin, and I'm the Director of College Counseling at Sierra Canyon School in Chatsworth. And I will throw it over to Bailey.
Hello, good evening. I'm Bailey Kwan, work at Newbridge School, which is in Poway. And now I will send it over to Lindsay.
Hi, everyone, and hi, Sarah. I was connecting to audio, so I did not get to say a proper hello. And hi to Jeanne, too, I've crossed paths with you as well. So I'm Lindsay Koss. I am the 7th through 9th grade director at Sierra Canyon, and I'm going to pass it to Lori.
Hi, I'm Lori Reel. I am the principal of FUHSD Adult School in Sunnyvale, Cupertino. And I'm going to pass it to Virginia.
Hi, everyone. I am Virginia Lee. I'm the Senior Director of Community Engagement and Partnerships at an education nonprofit named Partnership for LA Schools. How about Melanie?
Take myself off mute. Hi, I'm Melanie Martinez. I'm an assistant principal at Creekside Junior High in Los Baños, California. Oh, I will pass it to Laura Brady.
Hi, I'm Laura Brady, and I'm a principal of a kinder through 6th grade school in Los Baños Unified School District. And I'll pass it to Rebecca.
Good evening. My name is Rebecca Harris. I'm principal of a TKA through 8 elementary school in Compton Unified. I will pass it to Charmin.
Hi, everyone. I'm Charmin Evans. I'm the executive director of a preschool through 8th grade charter school in Camarillo, California. And I came in late, so I don't, and you were in the middle of introducing. So raise your hand if you haven't introduced yourself yet. I will turn it to Allison.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. I'm Allison Garland, Assistant Superintendent of Student Services in Montebello. Nice to meet you. Alissa, I don't think you've gone yet, right?
Alissa is one of the speakers.
Oh, then Alissa, I was just wondering if they're going to also introduce themselves or not.
Yeah, they will.
Later.
I think Carrie is connecting now.
Carolina, did you already go?
Yeah, she did.
Okay, who am I missing?
Carrie.
Carrie.
Hi, I'm Carrie Donahue. I work at a small MPS in Poway. Is that what we're doing, introductions?
Yeah.
Okay. And I'm a TESA coordinator and a team leader.
Okay, terrific. Did we miss?
And Margaret too.
Hi, I'm Margaret Sheftick. I'm the director of Newbridge School, which is a small MPS in Poway, California.
Great, thank you. Have we missed anybody else? Okay, we have 3 wonderful speakers today, and I've known them all a while. Allison actually did this program, what, last year? Alissa, I mean, did this program?
I did. Okay. Do you want me to introduce myself?
Please.
Sure. Hi, good evening, everyone. My name is Alissa Charlton, and I did do the Women's Leadership Group last year. And so definitely, reach out with any questions, but I am a co-principal at Larchmont Charter School at one of the 4 campuses. It's a TK through 4th grade school. And talking about multiple perspectives, I've been in a co-leadership model where I have a partner rather than having an additional administrative team. We work together and have partnered together as co-principals. And Larchmont is an intentionally diverse community that's diverse by design. And we're a part of that effort for a diverse charter school like working on growing our model. And so when we talk about multiple perspectives, it's all over the map in terms of diversity that you can see, diversity that you can't see, all different types of diversity. And I'm happy to be here tonight and talk to you guys.
Great, thank you. I think you've met Jeanne before, but Jeanne, could you introduce yourself again?
Sure. My name is Jeanne Huybrechts. This is actually the third year that I've contributed to this program. First year I was actually able to do it in person. Last year, of course not. And it's always a pleasure. I always enjoy so much working with individuals who are, deeply interested in becoming better school administrators. And I was my most recent job in Los Angeles was as the head of school at Harvard-Westlake School, a large independent school, has 2 campuses in LA. And I now work for a company that provides services for various schools around the country. And actually, it's been a great learning experience for me because many of the schools are preschools and many of the schools are Montessori schools, which I knew nothing about. And so that's been a lot of fun. Anyway, so very glad to be asked back again tonight.
Great. Both Jeanne and Sarah are on the advisory board for this program. Sarah, could you introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Sarah Shulkind. I'm the head of school at Milkin Community School in Los Angeles. It's an independent Jewish community school, grades 6 through 12 of about 750 students. I think this is also my third year.
Yes.
Coming to this program. And the first year was in person, which was so amazing. And hopefully it will be again.
Well, it was in person for a few months.
Oh, is that right? Yeah, I can't remember what the timeline. And I think, one of the reasons why I really enjoy doing this is I obviously get to work with wonderful colleagues, but also I really feel that I learn from all of you and just sort of get a sense of what's going on in lots of different realms of education. So it's always a really interesting couple of hours, and I'm grateful you invited me to join.
Great, thank you. Jeanne, you're going to start off with adaptive leadership.
I will. Now, everyone has introduced herself, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, good. Okay. I saw a couple more folks come in a little bit later. All right, so let me share my screen and start the slideshow. Can you now see my screen? I'm working with 2 screens. I'm thinking I'm so clever, but I actually cannot see what you see. So you'll just have to, it's good. Okay, fine.
You're good. Yeah.
So, you got some introduction. We sent out an email to you that gave you some introduction to what we were going to be doing, and also asked you to read a piece, a survival guide for leaders. So tonight we are going to first talk a little bit about the model, give an overview of the model that you've already read about. But I would like that to be participatory because the author of the article uses a lot of analogies from sports and business, and really almost none from schools. And so given what you've already read, it would be just nice if we could sort of contribute some ideas along those lines. So we're going to talk a little bit about the model in brief, and then the model in practice, where we've asked you to come to this assembly with a little case study. It didn't have to be anything written very fancy, but just something that you put down some notes. Your case studies will be analyzed within the context of the model that we've just presented, and also using the National School Reform Consultancy protocol, which Sarah is going to talk to you about. And then we'll wrap up. So first part, overview for everyone. Second part, a little bit of experience analyzing a problem that you've had in school. All right. Oops. No, I don't know why that picture is there. So let me go back up. Oh, you know why? Because I didn't start from the beginning. All right. Making decisions using multiple perspectives. There we go. And that's what I just did. And I'll go to this. All right. So the author first talks a little bit about the difference between technical challenges or technical problems and adaptive problems or challenges. And we're going to really spend very little time on this because most of what the model purports to help us with are with adaptive challenges, which of course are much more challenging. But just to make sure that we are differentiating between a technical challenge and an adaptive challenge, a technical challenge is clearly defined, can be solved by experts, can be resolved in shorter time spans, can be issued by edict if need be. is solved by authority, leaderships, or delegates, requires informative learning, but basic perceptions remain the same. So, just some examples of a technical challenge are, for example, you break your leg and you go to the doctor and the doctor sets it with a cast. You go to the car mechanic because the brakes have failed and you need new brake pads. All right, I'm going to contrast that with adaptive challenge in a moment. There are lots of these technical challenges in our schools. One that I thought of, that the textbook author is no longer publishing the textbook. That's going to require a change. That's going to require some individuals to do some work in looking at new textbooks, but nevertheless, it's just something that can be resolved fairly easily. An adaptive problem or challenge, on the other hand, is harder to define, must be solved by people, not experts, has long-term outcomes, requires changes in attitude, beliefs, and behaviors, requires collaboration, requires transformative learning and shifts in perception, and faces more resistance. As a matter of fact, it can face a lot of resistance. And I think that the authors differentiate between these two models because it is too often our mistake in trying to address an adaptive challenge with a technical solution. We can think real quickly of some kind of Band-Aid that we can put on a really knotty problem, when in fact, we should have addressed it as an adaptive challenge and recognized it as so. So just to go back to my two little analogies, one from medicine and one from auto repair. So, you break your leg, you can go to the doctor, have a cast put on, it's done. It's a technical challenge. You go to the doctor and the doctor says, you have high blood pressure, or you have high cholesterol, and you are going to have to change your habits, your, what you eat and what you, the amount of stress in your life. That's an adaptive challenge, much, much harder to solve. Going back to the car repair analogy, and I'll use my husband as an example. The brakes on his car need to be replaced much more often than the brakes on my car. Why is that? Because he's constantly braking the car. Speeds up, slows down, speeds up, slows down. And so that's an adaptive change that he has to make to really resolve that problem. Just very quickly to get a little conversation going here. Tell me some technical problems that you encounter in your schools. A technical challenge. You can just throw one out. And really, you don't have to raise your hand or anything, just because I can't see you all anyway.
I think during COVID, we had a ton of them. I'm sorry, Lori.
No, I was just saying implementing Zoom during COVID. Like, we needed to be online, and that's a technical challenge, literally.
There you go. And everybody loved it when you got the licenses, right?
Even a lot of the COVID regulations, there wasn't a choice. It was things we had to do. And, people might not have liked it, but it was just administrative.
And were there adaptive challenges associated with COVID?
Absolutely. So learning Zoom as a technical thing is one thing, but being a good teacher using Zoom is a whole nother thing.
Yeah, very true. Very true. Anyone else want to contribute to the list?
Creating equitable duty schedules. It's a technical challenge.
Anyone else?
I have one. So we're at my org, we're really thinking about how to team differently to do school transformation. And so structurally, we're like, oh, we bring all these people together. We're going to create a charter, all this stuff. Like, this is how we make decisions. So very technical, okay, this is how we vote. But what the adaptive challenge has been is actually creating an environment, like a culture where everyone actually feels like they belong in that, so, and that has been kind of the big thing that we've been trying to cultivate and figure out. And there's no straight answer.
Yeah, I'm sure of it. All right. So then, of course, the whole point of this is to recognize what sort of challenge you're facing and to avoid trying to fix something that is an adaptive challenge with a technical solution. All right, you know what? I clipped this article some months ago, and you know, it's a sort of it speaks to my age, the fact that I still have paper newspapers as opposed to online. But nevertheless, I clipped it out of the paper, and I just thought it was just such a great story, and I've used it over and over again. And it does relate to what we just talked about. So I'm just going to read it to you real quickly, especially since it's probably a little hard for you to see this. So this is a picture taken in July with all of the millionaires who have just gone up in their own spaceships and come back. Okay, so this was a letter to the editor, and I just thought it was just so clever. Over the last few weeks, you have published letters admonishing billionaires Richard Branson and Jeff Bezos for spending oodles of money on high-priced, high-profile rocket rides instead of fighting problems like climate change, homelessness, and inequality. What the writers of such missives don't seem to grasp is that flinging humans into space is fundamentally an engineering problem, and how quickly one solves an engineering problem tends to be a function of how much money you throw at it. In contrast, climate change, homelessness, and inequality are fundamentally political problems. And as we have learned from bitter experience, you can throw billions, even trillions of dollars in a political problem like poverty and advance little. Example, we recently solved a massively challenging engineering problem, producing a safe and effective COVID-19 vaccine by investing billions in the effort. But much of the population now refuses to take advantage of it because of their political leanings or willful ignorance. And no amount of money from Branson, Bezos, or Elon Musk is likely to change this. And I just thought that was a perfect example of technical challenge and adaptive challenge. All right, on to the next piece. So, you know, the article really is, you know, a set of processes or things to think about in leading adaptive changes, which are, you know, the thorniest of the changes but the most meaningful in our schools, right? So the model in brief, the authors say, manage your environment and manage yourself. And then within the manage your environment, there are sort of 4 big topics. And within manage yourself, there are 2, restrain your desire for control and anchor yourself. And so I'm just going to go through these in a little bit more detail. And again, I would like to solicit from the group some elements that relate, that are, you know, sort of school related, that relate to these rules or to these guidelines. All right, manage your environment. Operate in and above the fray from the dance floor to the balcony. So, you know, observe what's happening to your initiative as it is happening. Frequently move back and forth from the dance floor to the balcony, asking what's really going on here, who's defending old habits. Anybody want to talk about a change that they've helped orchestrate in their schools where they've known that they needed to step back periodically, or just what that looks like? Or how they've done that? What does it mean to step back?
I think, hi, good evening. I think part of it is to step back is the emotional piece. And they talked a little bit about that in here is, you know, detach yourself to look at for what it is, right? So when you're conducting a meeting or something, you're in the middle of the meeting, but also paying attention to the looks in the room and who people are looking at and the looks on their faces. So you can kind of see how it's landing and maybe why. And who's looking at who, because you can kind of see who the emotional center is in the room and kind of the leader, the emotional leader. So it's important not to be so emotionally involved in it that you can't step away from it and just really observe the behavior and try to see what's actually happening.
Yeah, I like that. Anyone else?
Jeanne, I think one thing I would add to it is even beyond sort of a change, even in the context of a meeting, you know, we've all been in those meetings where you're sort of sitting there thinking like, this is not what this is really about. You know, there's either all kinds of tension or all kinds of emotion, and just to be able to sort of pull back from it, especially if it's a meeting you're running, and think about like what's actually going on here, as opposed to sort of staying in it and trying to manage from like being within the fray.
I think you have to be super, observant and sort of tuned in to even perceive that, right? Because sometimes it's all unstated and it's just small comments that come out or, looks that someone makes, eye rolling, right?
Right. Sometimes you're so busy plotting your next move
Mhm.
that you're not really taking the time to take in the tone and some of that Allison was talking about. You see this happen in people. If you're a people watcher, which I am, because I think you have to be a good leader. I think you have to really be in tune with people's emotions, people's motives, and keep your own in check all the time. Because when you are too invested in your success of the moment, you lose sight of what's really happening. And I will come out, some of my leaders that work for me, in my organization, and they will have a concept of how something went, and you know exactly why. Because they were invested wrong in the moment. And they're completely off base about where this initiative is headed with the staff. So it's hard not to do that emotional, Sarah, I think said it, that, overly emotionally invested.
Yeah. And I think I just heard, periodically we have to ask others, how do you think that went? Right. That's sort of an act of going to the balcony. How do you think it went? All right. So that's sort of rule number one. Rule number two, or strategy number two, is court the uncommitted. So the authors point out that, there are going to be some folks in your organization who are totally with you at the very beginning. There are going to be some folks in the organization who might never, see it your way. But their chances are, especially if you've, been at the organization for a while, you have relationships with the individuals that you are working with. There's a great number of folks who are just uncommitted but wary, and they're crucial to your success. So you need to show that your intentions are serious, even if that means dismissing individuals who can't make required changes, and then practice what you preach. And the authors gave a couple of examples of that. All right, I'll go to the next one. Cook the conflict. This I was trying to, I read it and I believe it, but I was having a hard time kind of imagining how this is done in school. So maybe, again, I could go to the gallery and ask you what you think. So keep the heat high enough to motivate, but low enough to prevent explosions. Raise the temperature to make people confront hidden conflicts and other tough issues, then lower the heat to reduce destructive turmoil. Slow the pace of change, deliver humor, breaks, and images of a brighter future. All right, well, that's the last part is a little easier to do, the humor and the images of a brighter future. But anyone have any other examples of how they've launched something and then step back and what that looks like? Or not step back, slowed the pace a little bit?
This makes me think a little bit.
Go ahead. Sorry. Oh, you go.
Me?
Yeah.
This makes me think a little bit about the current state of diversity, equity, inclusion at our school. So like many other schools, and particularly independent schools in Los Angeles, after events that happened in the spring of 2020, there was a lot of push from many different stakeholders to embrace that work. And then I think also because we were all on lockdown, there was like a lot of opportunity to meet and discuss and form committees. And then last year we were so busy with COVID that like it was still there and present, but other things would pop up. And then this year we're sort of embracing it again. So somehow in a natural way, it was like it cooks the conflict. It's like people engage in the work and then they step back and then they engage again, which I think you need a lot of reflection to do that work, especially as a community. But the other thing I find that's interesting about it is like people want to see immediate changes, and that work can take a very long time, especially if you're trying to adopt it among a big group of people. And so like it resonated with me about maybe stepping away, like heating it up and then turning it down, and then heating it up and turning it down.
Right. That's great.
Good.
Anyone else want to add to that, or?
I was going to say this really resonated with me. One, because I had to have a really difficult conversation with a teacher today, which resulted in her being put on an improvement plan. But I did have to cook the conflict in the sense that I had to let her know it was serious, but I also had to keep her invested in the changes that we were going to make. On a larger level, it makes me think of PBIS implementation at my school and how we've tried to implement certain practices, and there's been, reluctance across different grade levels. But one thing that has helped this year is having a strong team of teachers who are implementing some of these practices in our classroom and having them deliver information and PD to the staff and getting people more invested over time.
That's a good
So
idea.
this one really resonated with me.
Yeah. And that last piece that you just mentioned is also sort of courting the uncommitted, but the committed but wary, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. And then there's place to work where it belongs. And, of course, we're all in leadership positions because we wanted to be there. We're all, strong individuals. And so, we need to resist the temptation to resolve the conflicts ourselves and really, there's a practical piece in that because, if people will blame you for whatever turmoil results, and also you don't, and you shouldn't be resolving all of it. If we're talking about change in an entire environment, then everyone has a piece in that. All right, so then manage yourself, manage your environment, and then manage yourself. Restrain your desire for control and need for importance. That's a little bit of, that's related to the last piece that we just talked about. Order for its own sake prevents organizations from handling contentious issues. And especially for those of us who are sort of, we want to be pleasers. It's sometimes tough to just allow the arguing and the turmoil persist for a while, but that's related to keeping the heat up. Order for its own sake prevents organizations from handling contentious issues, and an inflated self-image fosters unhealthy dependence on you, which you do not want. And then finally, anchor yourself. It's a big job, and leading particularly sort of thorny changes, difficult changes in your organizations is tough. So you need a safe space or routine to repair psychological damage and recalibrate your moral compass. You need to acquire a confidant, not an ally from the organization, but someone who will really help you, give you back and forth and on your ideas, and is not necessarily, you may or may not support a current initiative, but you need someone to be able to bounce ideas off of. Read attacks as reactions to your professional role, not to you personally. This is also tough. Because anger and unhappiness will almost certainly be directed toward you. You'll remain calmer and keep people engaged if you're able to step back and do that. Anyone else want to add a piece about anything about managing yourself? Something that you learned from this, or something that you had to do recently at your schools?
I think that part of managing yourself too is that you have to be aware of the feelings that you're feeling and why, and that's really hard to do. So they always say name it to tame it, right? So figure out exactly what you're feeling and try to identify so you can get outside of that, so you can try to manage the emotions of the room. But it's really hard to figure out what everybody is trying to say and do, and to have that balcony view if you're so tied up in it. So I think it's really naming it and figuring out why that's happening.
Yeah, that's really good. And perhaps the confidant can help you do that, right? All right, then. So that is the model. And what we're going to do now is we're going to spend a little time. Each of you has hopefully brought some personal experience. Yes.
Is Sarah going to talk about the consultancy?
Yes, right now. Right. So I'm going to turn this over to Sarah right now. So we're going to go into that session, but first I think I'm going to stop sharing for a moment and ask Sarah just to talk a little bit about the consultancy protocol, which I'd never used before, and it was super interesting. And I'm eager to hear her say more about that. You're on mute. Sarah, you're on mute.
I was on mute because of all the screaming in the background from my children who are, I think, trying to get my attention, which worked for a moment. Okay, so I want to just sort of share this model. As you saw, it is informed by the National School Reform faculty. If you go to their website, they have many protocols that you can download and use in triads, in groups, at a meeting, in a parent body. And the goal of the protocols is really to help you dig in to really thorny dilemmas, usually adaptive challenges. And we're bringing this model to you both because we think it will be productive for the conversations that we're about to have, but also we want you to walk away with both the model that Jeanne shared with you, but also an actual protocol that you can take back to your teams. So I'll just give you sort of an overview of what it is. And on the one hand, try to stick to the times and to the structure. And of course, you don't have to be totally rigid. So if there's a conversation that's going and really meaningful, you don't have to feel like you have to stick to it exactly. And following it to some extent can really help bring out the adaptive challenge in the work. So you can see sort of the overview, and we'll share this document with you afterwards. It's a structured process for helping an individual or a team think more expansively about a particular dilemma. I think, again, when you're in the work and sort of on the dance floor, it can be really hard to see what actually is going on. And so this protocol will really help you pull back. And also the fact that there are other people around you who aren't in your workplace should be helpful. So the total time frame is 30 minutes. So you, as a small group, you'll have time to go through 2 different people, but everyone will do the first 2 steps. So you'll start by just thinking about your dilemma. And I know you brought a dilemma in, but take some time just to really think about and write about the dilemma. And there's a series of probing questions about it. Why is it already being resolved? Is it bothering you enough that it sort of keeps you up at night? Is it something that's important to you and something that you actually are willing to work on? There's a lot of work that's challenging that just doesn't make it to the top of the list for whatever reason. And I can't remember who said it, but I think, Lindsay, you were talking about DEI, and then it was COVID. And that sort of, in that moment, not that DEI wasn't important, but there were really urgent technical issues that had to be solved. So just make sure it's a dilemma that you have the space to really work on. Part of that will be to do some reflective writing. So the first 3 to 8 minutes will be really taking time for yourself to think about the challenge that you're identifying. And in that, you want to frame a focus question. So for the 2 people who are going to do the consultancy, you're going to pose a focus question for the group. You can tell a little bit about the dilemma and then pose the question that you want the group to focus on. I'm trying to think of an example, but so I guess one of the examples of an adaptive challenge that we went through over the past couple of years is that we moved to standards-based grading. And what we did is we sort of like moved pretty quickly. We took a year of study, and then we sort of did like a rip the Band-Aid off, everyone's doing it. And we sort of turned up the heat and then turned down the heat. And now we're at a place where we're trying to assess what are the next best steps. So that's not a totally fully formed focus question, but a question that really gets at how do you sort of pull along that last 25%, or how do you take faculty input and come up with a balance that's going to move you forward, maybe not at the pace you want, but at a pace the group can handle. So some sort of dilemma like that you're bringing to the group. Then the group will be able to ask the presenter clarifying questions. Clarifying questions are yes and no questions. So if the answer isn't yes or no, it's not a clarifying question. And then the group without the participant will discuss the dilemma. With the participant will discuss the dilemma. You can all just sort of have a conversation, and it's going to be tempting for the presenter to just lead that conversation, but it really should be a group conversation. And then we'll close the last 26 to 30 minutes with a presenter reflecting on what they've learned. Any overarching questions before we break into, of course, we're running behind. So instead of 30 minutes, it will probably
That
be
would make it 20.
26 minutes.
You can take 30 minutes each. It's okay.
Okay. Well, we probably need to agree on a time to come back together. Is that right, Jeanne and Alissa?
Yes, that's good. So, well, it's 6:05. Is that correct or not?
It's 7:07.
7:05.
Oh, I'm sorry, 7:05.
We have
Yeah,
another
the
like
clock is-
55 minutes.
Yeah.
So should we come back at 5 to 8?
That's fine.
Great.
That's good. Come back at 5 to 8.
Any questions about the protocol or why you might use a protocol, why we're doing this protocol?
What is the, so you've used this before. What do you think you get out of this that you wouldn't just normally get out of it by just having someone come to the group and say, oh, look, here's my problem? I mean,
I think in the initial phase, you're really forced to articulate what the problem is. It sort of does for you the work of like pulling up off the dance floor and really sort of being able to see like, what am I really asking here?
Yeah,
In the second phase, I do think that sort of manage your environment, manage yourself, and the group's questions and helping you to think through that. In my experience, you walk away with a more, not only like a deeper understanding, but you think about it from many, many different perspectives that you might not have considered. And I do think the fact that we're all from different schools or organizations will really help that process, because you're going to ask questions that somebody in your work setting would have never asked.
Great.
Okay.
All right.
I think we can
I'll just share the
going.
screen again for a second, because I think I've got our groups here. Is this correct?
Yeah, Heidi should have them also.
Oh, Heidi has them also. Okay, great.
Yeah.
All right.
I
Then
should be
we
ready
will-
to address your room.
We will be back in together at 5 till 8,
Right.
and looking forward to this.
All right, perfect. Here you go.
Thank you.
Right. You know what, I would just, be interested in knowing sort of what all of the questions were, I guess, would be,
Okay.
we had really super, and then Sarah, I have one question for you. I mean, are people able actually to stick to the ask a question that only has a yes or no answer? I mean, that was really tough. Can you get good at this and, you get to that place? Because we couldn't obey the rules.
I mean, I abbreviated this protocol. There's like a second layer of questions that's you do like clarifying questions and then probing questions. I cut the probing questions because I thought we wouldn't have time.
Yeah.
But in general, I would recommend like you do like clarifying questions and probing questions and model it before you do it.
Yeah.
The protocol, it's really meant to be an hour long, and you could sort of feel in it why. I mean, or our group could. So, but yeah, it's hard, and it's okay if it doesn't. It's just like the practice of sort of asking a specific kind of question.
Everyone was just apologizing, and then they would ask the question, right? So,
Yeah.
this isn't yes or no, but here it is.
We were the advanced group.
Yeah.
Right. So probing questions.
Right away.
We really botched the protocol. I botched the protocol for our group, but it was still interesting.
It was very interesting. All right, so let's just do that very quickly. Melanie, what was your question? What was your question?
Where do I start to reintroduce PBIS to our staff after a 2-year hiatus of COVID?
Yeah, so she had a good year, then 2 years off, and now she to reintroduce it. All right, it was a great discussion.
It was. Thank you.
Rebecca, your dilemma?
How do I invest my team, or really a teacher, in an inevitable move to middle school? Math and science.
Currently an elementary school teacher.
Currently, fourth
This will
grade.
be a good thing for her, but she just doesn't know it yet, right?
Yeah, she doesn't know.
Yeah.
She will.
All right. Other question from the other groups?
Sure. We had Margaret had a question that we talked about. Is she? I don't see her here.
I'm here somewhere.
Margaret's here.
Oh, I see you now.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
I guess my question was, how do we have a group of teachers who want to have more input, have titles, and how do we kind of frame that, make the changes that they want so that they want to stay and feel like they're part of the decision making, part of the administration kind of thing.
Great.
Great. And then Stephanie also had a question. We didn't get to frame your question, but we did talk about it. So can you boil it down?
Sure. Mine was because I'm moving into the upper school director role next year, and I'm currently a college counselor. So it was how to earn the respect from the faculty coming from a non-traditional background, since I have not been a classroom teacher.
Oh, that's a great, yeah. That
was very helpful.
Good
feedback from my group. So thank you.
Good. And Sarah, from your group? And you are on mute.
You would think that I would know that by now. Lindsay, you want to share yours?
Sure. So I posed the question, how might we adapt our student handbook to support our mission of equity and inclusion? So thinking about like how to frame discipline and some of the discipline challenges we've had since we've come back from COVID, and how do we make it more equitable?
Carolina?
I shared my question and then I guess I rephrased it after our conversation. It's how do I engage teachers in conversations of the importance of providing social and emotional learning? So I had to restate my question.
Those are all really good questions.
Yeah.
And you really have to dig deep to work on them. I want to thank Jeanne and Sarah and Alissa for helping us with this. It's much appreciated. Hope to see you again soon.
Oh, absolutely. Absolute pleasure. And, you know, if Linda, maybe after we're gone, if you could ask if this was a useful article, if exposure to the protocol was was useful, because, we could definitely come back and do this again next year, but doesn't necessarily have to be the same, same article, same protocol.
Okay, great. No, good idea.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Pleasure.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Well, I wanted to say one thing, Linda, before I leave. So I had shared this with my group, but I had just done this group last year. And a couple things that I just wanted to tell you is definitely go to your in-person meeting, because I know that it's hard sometimes to motivate, but we had a really nice time when we met, when I actually got to meet people in person. And then the other thing, and I shared this with my group, was that you'll come in contact with people through this. And like, I think that every person I reached out to, and I don't know that I've shared this with you, Linda, but every person who I reached out to who were speakers or panelists, they all were open to conversations and informational meetings. So I think there's some really good mentors. So I just wanted to share that with you as someone who finished recently and enjoyed that.
With your group, we weren't able to meet until way after the program ended.
I know.
We had 2 luncheons after the program ended to meet for the first time when the pandemic permitted it.
Right. It was so nice. Like, and I know some people just were like, oh, it's hard. Like, it was right after the pandemic and it's so hard to like make an effort, but it was really, really fun. So,
yeah, it was great to meet all the people that you would just talk to for 6 months.
Yeah. So anyway, thank you.
Thank you, Alissa.
See you later. Bye.
Talk to you soon.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Okay, what we're going to do now is to have a coffee break. So a coffee break means you can run around and do whatever you want, or else Heidi will put you into a group with just random people and you can just talk about whatever you want to talk about, or you can do both. So we'll come back at 8:35. Okay, so don't get out of Zoom. you know, just cover your video and and put it on mute. Something. Anyone have any thoughts on it? So the readings by Heifetz and Linsky, was it helpful on adaptive leadership? And the consultancy protocol, was it helpful in identifying real problems? You know, the dilemmas that are pretty deep, not technical problems. And I think actually reframing something as questions is helpful. Is there anybody who would use it at their own school? And if not, why not?
I think it was helpful. I think protocols are always helpful because it really focuses the conversation and focuses the process. And whenever other people are asking you questions, sometimes things just click, you know, like, oh, didn't think about that. So I think it's a really good protocol. I liked it. And I like the article too.
Good. So Virginia, you use this in your work?
Yeah, that's where I was first introduced, is at the nonprofit that I'm at right now. We've used it in different settings. One thing that I like about it is, like, in addition to inviting people that are kind of close to the work, you also like think about who are other like potential perspectives that might be helpful. So it's been helpful since we have such a large team and different people do all different sorts of things. So it's been helpful to kind of get different perspectives.
So you get different constituencies.
Yeah, because we have folks that are like academic, we have folks that do operations, we have folks that, you know, I do community engagement, we have family engagement. So we have kind of a different mix of people.
So have you adapted the protocol?
We've had to shorten, we don't skip the steps, but have had to shorten the time.
Yeah.
Depending on the meeting setting.
Right.
Yeah.
Has anybody else used it?
I've used it a couple of times, long past life, not in my current situation yet. But I think what I appreciate is it's very easy to editorialize and defend your responses unless you're kept to, you know, yes, no answers or very specific probing questions. And so that does help refine people's thinking and also push things forward, in my opinion.
So does it reduce the issue of personalities?
I think so. Well, and it also takes, like during the discussion where the person with the dilemma can't talk, it takes the pressure off that person, I think, to have to fill in every space or explain everything. You're just kind of listening to what rose to the top to other people.
So did you find the concept of the balcony and the dance floor helpful? So being away from the problem and looking down on it versus being in the midst of it. Because I think it can be so emotional when you're in the middle of it. Did you have enough time? No. Would you like me to ask them to come back?
Absolutely.
Okay, I'll tell them we can't wait till next year. There really isn't much time left, but to put you into mentor groups. So the only thing I'd like to ask you about is something for next time. We're going to meet again on April 5th, and Deborah Eduardo's coming. She's superintendent of Los Angeles County Schools. And have any of you heard her speak? No? She has quite a story, actually. She had a child early on when she was in high school, she married. The first child is severely disabled. She had 4 more kids and ended up going back to school. And she spent a number of years in school and working. And she finally ended up with a doctorate. But she skipped a number of the steps you would take to get to superintendent. So she was head of emotional health or mental issues or whatever for LAUSD. And then soon after that, she became superintendent of county schools. But somehow she did the transition really well. So actually what I'd like you to think about is what kind of questions you'd like to ask her. She's going to talk about women and barriers to success and so on. So I don't know if you want to send me some questions and I can send them to her. Because she actually has like 3 assistants. And they emailed me and said, well, what exactly is she supposed to talk about? Boy, it'd be fun to have 3 assistants. So if you do have questions, please let me know what they are. And if you also want to ask her about balance, you can. Like, how do you balance your life? I know your jobs tend to be much more than 7 or 8 hours a day. And sometimes the time is just thinking time. But how do you have a life besides that? So is there anybody who wants to say anything about this evening? Or do any of you have issues, dilemmas that you would like the group to consider if they come back? You know, Jeanne and Sarah and Alissa.
I appreciated the group I was in. They helped me a lot, and I appreciate their contributions to my dilemma.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, so on that note, I think we probably should end here. Unless there's anybody who wants to object. I once had a class, I used to teach 6 to 10 p.m. And one of the students one day emailed me and said, one of the other faculty, he always stops at 9:30. We want to go to 10 o'clock. And I emailed her back and I said, don't tell the other members in your group, they'll kill you. Not in those exact words, but anyway. So if you have any thoughts about tonight, or if you have questions for Deborah Duardo, if you have dilemmas you'd like to discuss with the 3 who came tonight, please let me know. And if you have any final comments, I'd love to hear them. Okay, so if you haven't taken a shower in the break, this is your time. Anyway, good seeing you. And
Good night, Linda.
Have a good night, everybody.
Okay.
Good night, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank
Great
you.
session.
Good night.
Good night.